I walked into my apartment and stopped dead in the hallway. The living room was half empty. My couch? Gone. The entertainment center I'd bought 3 months ago? Gone. My leather armchair that I'd saved up for? Gone. For a moment, I just stood there, my keys still in my hand, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My heart started pounding. I pulled out my phone and dialed Marcus immediately. "Where is my furniture?" I said the second he picked up. "Ashley, we need to talk about—" "No, where is my furniture?" I could hear my own voice shaking. I told you we couldn't keep living like this. Living together before marriage is a sin, and I'm not going to—" I hung up on him. That was 3 hours ago. Now I'm sitting on the hardwood floor of my own apartment, in the dark, trying to figure out how the man I'd planned to marry decided he had the right to throw out everything I owned. 6 months earlier, things had been different. Everything had felt right, actually. Perfect, even. I'd bought the apartment 2 years before I met Marcus, a modest one-bedroom in a decent neighborhood in Charlotte, North Carolina. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. I'd put down $12,000 of my own money, worked with a realtor named Sharon, who'd become a friend, and signed papers at a notary office downtown. The mortgage was manageable on my salary as a marketing coordinator at a tech firm. The HOA fees were reasonable. I decorated it slowly, carefully, picking out pieces I actually loved instead of just filling space. Then I met Marcus at church. He was tall, well-dressed, with this easy confidence that made you feel like he had everything figured out. He worked in commercial real estate, made good money, went to the gym 4 times a week. He had a deep voice and a smile that made my stomach flip. When he asked me out after the service one Sunday in September, I said yes without hesitation. For the first 3 months, he was attentive and thoughtful. He'd bring me coffee at work, remember details I'd mentioned in passing, plan nice dates, dinner at that Italian place downtown, a weekend trip to the mountains, picnics in the park. My friends were jealous. My mom loved him. My coworkers asked when he was going to propose. By December, he was spending almost every night at my place. "You should move in," I'd suggested one evening, half joking as we lay in bed watching a movie. "I mean, it makes sense. Why pay rent for your apartment if you're here all the time anyway?" He didn't answer immediately. He never did when he was thinking hard about something. Finally, he said, "I want to do this right, Ashley. I don't want to live in sin." I laughed. "It's 2024, Marcus. Lots of people live together before marriage." "Not people who believe what we believe," he said quietly. "At least, not people who want to honor God in their relationships." I remember feeling a little flutter of something at that. Not fear exactly, but awareness that this was a man with strong convictions. I liked that about him. I dated guys who seemed like they believed in nothing. "So what are you saying?" I asked. "I'm saying I think we should get married." My heart had literally skipped. "Are you proposing?" "Not yet," he smiled. "But I will, soon. I just wanted you to know where my head is. I want to build a life with you, Ashley. I want it to be done right." 2 weeks later, he gave me a ring, a beautiful princess-cut diamond on a white gold band. He must have spent close to $5,000 on it. He proposed at sunset on a hiking trail, on one knee, with the whole thing. It was the most romantic moment of my life. My mom threw us an engagement party. We started looking at venues for a wedding in June. I registered for china patterns and bedding. Everything felt solid and real, and like my life was finally moving towards something that mattered. That was when things started to shift. At first, it was small. Marcus would comment on a lamp I had. "That's not really a look we should go for in our home." Or he'd suggest I get rid of some books. He had very specific ideas about what our space should look like. I figured it was normal, couples compromise on decorating. I didn't mind. Some of my stuff was older anyway. Then, in early April, he'd said something that stuck with me. "I've been thinking about the living situation," he said. We were sitting on my couch, which was still there then, eating takeout Thai food. "I know we're engaged and everything, but I'm still not comfortable with us living together like this. It doesn't feel right. We should wait until we're married." I set down my pad thai. "Marcus, we're getting married in 2 months." "I know, but 2 months is still 2 months. I've been thinking, Maybe I should move back to my place until after the wedding. Keep things separate. Keep things clean before God. We've been living together for 4 months, I said carefully. We're engaged. I don't understand what's changed. I've just been praying about it, and it's been weighing on me, he said. I want to do this right. I think we should separate living spaces until we're married. I remember thinking it was weird, but also kind of sweet in a way. He was serious about his faith. He wanted to honor his commitments. I could respect that. Okay, I'd said. If that's what you need, that's fine. You can move back to your place. He'd moved out the next week. But he was still here all the time. He'd come over in the evenings and we'd spend time together. He had a key. He'd let himself in, rearrange my furniture, make comments about the artwork on my walls. He started suggesting I change things, paint the bedroom a different color, get rid of that bookshelf, maybe replace the curtains with something more mature. I should have seen it coming. I really should have. But I didn't. I was too busy planning a wedding, too caught up in the fantasy of what I thought we were building. And now I was sitting on the floor of my own apartment in the dark, and everything I owned that wasn't bolted down was gone. I called my mom first, not because I thought she could fix it, but because I needed someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling like my world had just ended. He did what? Her voice went up 3 octaves. Ashley, honey, he threw your furniture out of your apartment? My apartment, Mom. He doesn't even live here. Well, technically he has a key, which he shouldn't have anymore, I said, and I heard my voice crack. I need to change the locks. You need a lawyer, my mom said flatly. This is theft or destruction of property or something. Get a lawyer. But I didn't call a lawyer that night. Instead, I called Marcus back. He picked up on the 3rd ring, like he'd been waiting. Don't hang up on me, he said before I could speak. Please, I did what I thought was right. You're living in sin, Ashley, and I couldn't be part of it anymore. You threw out my furniture, Marcus. I gave it to Goodwill. It's not like it's gone. You can get it back if you really want it. I stood up. I was pacing now, my free hand shaking. You had no right to touch my things. This is my apartment. I own it. My name is on the deed. I know, he said quietly. That's the problem. What does that even mean? It means I can't marry a woman who owns an apartment. I can't move into a place where you're the owner and I'm just the husband. It doesn't feel right. A man should provide for his family. A man should own the home. I stopped pacing. Are you serious right now? I'm completely serious. I've been thinking about this for weeks and I realized I can't do it. When we get married, you need to put the apartment in my name, or we need to sell it and buy something together that we both own equally. But I can't live here like this. And you decided to throw my furniture out instead of just talking to me about it. I was trying to send a message, he said. I was trying to show you how serious I am. I hung up. Then I called my best friend Jennifer. He's insane, she said, not even bothering with hello. Oh my God, Ashley, he's actually insane. Who does that? Someone who thinks God told him to, I said bitterly. We're coming over, Jennifer said. Me, and I'm calling David and Tyler too. Don't let him back in that apartment. Change the locks tonight. I didn't change the locks that night, but I did text Marcus. Do not come to this apartment again. Do not contact me. We're done. He didn't respond. The next morning, I called a locksmith. A guy named Derek showed up at 8 a.m. with tools and a no-nonsense attitude. While he was changing the deadbolt, I sat on my bare kitchen floor with a cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching him work. Rough situation? He asked, not looking away from the lock. You could say that. Boyfriend? Fiancé. Well, not anymore. He nodded like he'd heard this story 100 times. Smart move changing the locks. Guy like that, you don't wait around. The new key was in my hand by 9 a.m. It felt like the first thing I'd controlled in days. Then I did something I probably should have done sooner. I called a divorce attorney. Not because Marcus and I were married, we weren't, but because I'd learned something important. You need legal advice when someone is trying to control your assets and your space. The attorney's name was Linda Chen. She was a small woman in her 50s, with gray streaking her black hair, and she had this way of looking at you like she'd already heard every excuse a man could make for his behavior. "Walk me through exactly what happened," she said, and I did. I told her about the cohabitation demand, the furniture, the conversation about the apartment needing to be in his name. "He's showing a pattern of control," Linda said, making notes. "The furniture removal, the comments about your possessions, the insistence that you change the fundamental ownership structure of your home. This is concerning behavior." "Can he actually claim anything to my apartment? I mean, I own it outright. My name is on the deed." "He might try," Linda said. "Some states have common law marriage provisions, but North Carolina isn't one of them. You're not married. He has no legal claim to your property. However, he might argue that he made contributions, paid some bills, helped with maintenance. I'd advise you to document everything from now on." "What about the furniture he threw out? Do you have proof of what he removed? Photos, credit card statements showing purchases?" I did. I had email confirmations from the furniture store where I'd bought my couch and armchair. I had photos I'd posted on Instagram of my decorated apartment from 2 months ago. I pulled them up on my phone and showed Linda. "Good," she said. "Keep all of this. Make a list with dates and approximate values. If he doesn't return the items and you decide to pursue this, you'll need it." I paid Linda $600 for that consultation, and it was worth every penny, because she made me feel like I wasn't insane, like what Marcus had done was actually wrong. The next week was a blur of humiliation and damage control. I had to tell people. My mom told half of Charlotte at her book club. Jennifer and David and Tyler helped me move a borrowed couch into my living room, their couch actually, until I could afford to replace my own furniture. I had to call the wedding venue and cancel. I had to call the caterer and the florist and the photographer. "Cancellation fee is 50%, the wedding planner said, since it's less than 3 months away. $2,500. Gone. I took it out of my emergency fund, the emergency fund I'd been building for years, the emergency fund that was supposed to be for actual emergencies, not for the cost of ending an engagement to a man who'd decided he owned me. The worst part was running into people who knew about the wedding. One of my coworkers saw me in the break room and asked how wedding planning was going. I almost cried right there by the coffee machine. "It's off," I said. "I'm not getting married." "Oh no, what happened?" she asked, and her face had that expression, that mix of pity and curiosity that makes you feel even worse. "He wasn't who I thought he was," I said, and I left. But then, exactly 2 weeks after he threw out my furniture, something happened that changed everything. I was at Target buying groceries when I ran into Marcus's mother, Carol. I recognized her immediately, tall, blonde, the same sharp features Marcus had. She was pushing a cart with a woman I didn't recognize. They were laughing about something. I almost turned around, but Carol saw me first. "Ashley," she called out, waving me over. "Oh, honey, I was just thinking about you." I walked over, my stomach tight. "This is my friend Patricia," Carol said, gesturing to the woman next to her. "Patricia, this is Ashley. She was engaged to my son Marcus until very recently." Patricia looked at me with sympathy. "Oh, the furniture situation. I heard about that." I stared at her. "How did you—" "Marcus told me," Carol said, and she was smiling. "He told me he had to remove the furniture because you were living in sin and he needed to make a point." "He told you about throwing out my belongings?" I could feel my face getting hot. "Well, he said he gave it away," Carol said, "to charity. I think what he did was very brave, actually. It showed he's willing to take a stand for his values." I looked at her, really looked at her, and something clicked. "You knew," I said quietly. "He told you he was going to do it, and you knew." Carol's smile faltered slightly. "I didn't know he was going to—" "You knew, or you approved, or both. That's why you're standing here defending him. That's why you don't think it's a problem that your son threw away a woman's property without her consent." Patricia looked uncomfortable and suddenly very interested in a box of cereal. "Ashley, I don't think that's fair," Carol started. "Fair?" I laughed, and it came out bitter. "You want to talk about fair? Your son demanded that I put my apartment that I bought and paid for, in his name. He called living together before marriage a sin, but he was sleeping in my bed every night. And then he threw out my furniture as a message, and you think that's brave?" Carol's face had gone red. "Marcus is a good man. He just has strong beliefs." "Strong beliefs don't give him the right to steal from me," I said, "or manipulate me, or control me. So no, I don't think he's brave. I think he's a bully who hid behind religion to justify being a bully." I walked away before she could respond. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from anger. From relief, actually, because I'd finally said it out loud, and it was true, and I didn't care anymore if his mother thought I was wrong for seeing it. I called Linda Chen that afternoon. "I want to pursue this," I said. "The furniture, the financial damages, everything." "Okay," Linda said. "Let me file a complaint. We'll start with a demand letter. Sometimes that's enough to get someone to settle." Linda sent the demand letter 2 days later. $5,800, the replacement cost of the couch, the armchair, the entertainment center, plus the wedding cancellation fee that resulted from his actions. Marcus didn't respond to the letter. What he did instead was worse. 3 weeks later, I got a message from an unknown number. It was a photo of me at my apartment, taken through the window. The timestamp said it was from that morning. I called the police. Officer Reynolds came to my apartment and took a report. He showed me how to document the message, how to save it, how to block the number. "Do you know who sent this?" he asked. "I have a pretty good idea," I said. "My ex-fiancé." "Have you had any contact with him since the breakup?" "No. I changed the locks. I told him not to contact me." Officer Reynolds made more notes. "If you get another message or if you see anyone watching your apartment, you call us immediately. This could escalate. You might want to consider a restraining order." A restraining order. The words felt surreal. I called Linda immediately. "Yes, we can file for that," she said. "Take that photo to the courthouse. We'll go for an ex parte order first. That means the judge will issue it without Marcus being there. Then he'll have a chance to contest it. But based on what you've described, you have a strong case." The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. In that time, I got 2 more photos, both taken from outside my apartment, both with timestamps that proved he'd been there, watching. On the day of the hearing, I wore a black blazer and brought every piece of evidence. Linda brought her own copies of everything. Marcus showed up with a lawyer, a young guy named Brandon who looked barely older than Marcus himself. The judge was an older woman, probably in her 60s, and she did not look sympathetic to Marcus. "Mr. Patterson," she said, "your fiancé, former fiancé, has documented 3 instances of photographing her without consent. She's changed the locks to her home. She's asked you not to contact her. Can you explain why you were taking photographs?" Marcus's lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, my client was simply documenting the property in question. The property in question is a woman," the judge said coldly. "Not an apartment, a woman, who asked you not to contact her, who filed a restraining order. The question stands, Mr. Patterson. Why were you taking photographs?" Marcus looked at Brandon, then back at the judge. "I was trying to protect my interests. I wanted to document—" "Your interests?" the judge interrupted. "You have no legal interest in that apartment. Your name is not on the deed, and you are not married to Ms. Ashley. You had no right to be on that property, and you certainly had no right to photograph her." She signed the restraining order without hesitation. "Mr. Patterson, you are to stay at least 500 feet away from Ms. Ashley's residence and place of employment. You are not to contact her by phone, text, email, social media, or any other means. You are not to take photographs of her or her property. If you violate this order, you will face criminal charges. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded, pale. "I need a verbal affirmation, Mr. Patterson." "Yes, I understand," he said quietly. As I walked out of the courthouse, Linda squeezed my arm. "That went better than I expected. You did good in there. You were calm. You told the truth." "What about the furniture?" I asked. "And the wedding costs?" "The restraining order is the priority," Linda said. "That protects you. Now, regarding the financial damages, we can still pursue a small claims case. But given that he threw the furniture away rather than selling it or keeping it, it's going to be harder to prove. However, the wedding cancellation fee, that's different. If we can prove that he caused the cancellation through his actions, we have a stronger case. Can we prove that? You have the emails where you canceled, you have the timeline, you have the context of his demand that you change the deed to your apartment. I think we can make a compelling argument that his behavior directly caused the financial loss. 2 months later, we had our small claims hearing. Marcus showed up alone this time, without Brandon. He looked thinner, and there were dark circles under his eyes. I felt nothing when I saw him, not anger, not sadness, not even satisfaction. Just a hollow recognition that this was a person I'd once loved, and that person had never actually existed. The judge listened to Linda's argument about the timeline and the causation. She listened to Marcus's lawyer argue that the wedding cancellation was Ashley's choice, not his responsibility. But it wasn't really my choice, was it? I said, when it was my turn to speak. I didn't want to cancel the wedding because I woke up one day and decided I didn't want to marry him. I canceled it because he threw my furniture out of my apartment and demanded that I put my home in his name. I canceled it because I realized I didn't know who he was. That's not a choice. That's a consequence of his actions. The judge awarded me $4,800. Not the full amount, but most of it. The judge said there was insufficient evidence to prove the replacement cost of the furniture with certainty, but the wedding cancellation fee was clearly a direct result of the breakup caused by Marcus's behavior. I cried in the hallway outside the courtroom. Not sad tears, exhausted tears, relieved tears. Linda hugged me. "You did it, Ashley. You stood up for yourself." Marcus didn't appeal. The judgment stood. It took him 6 months to pay, and only because Linda sent him a payment plan and threatened garnishment of his wages. But eventually, the money came through. $2,400 at a time, twice a month, for 2 months. It wasn't enough to fix what he'd done. It wasn't enough to give me back the 6 months I'd spent planning a wedding to a man who wanted to own me. It wasn't enough to undo the humiliation of telling people that the engagement was off, or the guilt I'd felt for not seeing the warning signs sooner. But it was something. It was proof that what he'd done mattered, that I mattered, that my property and my autonomy and my right to live in my own apartment without being photographed or manipulated weren't things he could just take from me. I used the money to replace my furniture. New couch, new armchair, new entertainment center. I decorated my apartment exactly the way I wanted it, without anyone's input or approval, and I never heard from Marcus again. The restraining order expired after 2 years, but by then I'd moved on so completely that I didn't even think about renewing it. He'd become a cautionary tale, I told my friends, a man who showed me what to watch for in relationships, a person I'd loved who turned out to be someone I didn't know at all. Sometimes I think about Carol, Marcus's mother, and what she must have felt when she found out about the restraining order. I wonder if she ever questioned whether her son was as brave as she thought. I wonder if she ever realized that defending his behavior meant defending his right to control and manipulate and steal. I don't really care anymore. What I know now is this: when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And when someone tells you that you can't live together before marriage, and then throws out your furniture and demands your apartment, that person is showing you exactly who they are. A man who uses religion as a weapon. A man who thinks love means control. A man who believes that marriage is ownership. I spent 2 years after Marcus putting myself back together. I went to therapy. I worked with a financial advisor to rebuild my emergency fund. I went on dates with men who respected my independence and my right to own my own home. I eventually met someone who didn't see my apartment as a problem, someone who was genuinely happy that I was financially stable and independent. We got married 3 years ago, on my terms, in my apartment that I still own. And when we decided to move in together, he didn't demand that I put it in his name. He asked how I wanted to handle it. We talked about it, like adults, like equals. The difference was like night and day. My therapist once asked me what I would tell my younger self if I could go back to that moment when I was sitting on my hardwood floor, staring at my empty apartment. I said, I would tell her that she's going to be okay, that what happened wasn't her fault, that she saw the red flags and didn't know how to read them yet, but she would learn. And I would tell her that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. She asked me what I would tell other women in similar situations. I said, don't wait for someone else to validate what you already know. If he's controlling your space, he's going to control everything else. Get out, get help, get a lawyer. Your apartment, your furniture, your life, those are yours. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. That's the truth I learned when Marcus threw out my furniture. Not a romantic lesson about love and trust, just a hard, necessary lesson about knowing your own worth and protecting it fiercely.